What's up, guys? Welcome to Pan African Perspectives on the Authentic African YouTube channel. If you want to know the biggest mistakes I've made since coming back to America after leaving Africa and living there for 4 years, then this is the video for you. All right. If you are just joining us, let us know if you can hear us. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me. We're going to talk about my regrets, my biggest mistakes I've made since moving back to America after leaving Africa. If you're new to the channel, this is the Authentic African platform. I am Joe Hatagwa. And what we do every week is we have a live discussion called Pan-African Discussions or Pan-African Perspectives, where we dive into the real life experiences of people visiting Africa, those who are planning on moving to the continent, people investing in African ventures, and also people who are buying land. This is all with the ultimate goal of advancing Africa and restoring it to its rightful place on the world stage. So every week we will either be having my own stories or the stories of others who've recently made the move. And so today, again, if you're just joining us, make sure you give me a thumbs up so I know you can hear me, and let me know where you guys are watching from. So we got Sess. I don't think you've been living in Africa full-time anyways. Okay. I haven't been. No, I was living in Africa full-time for 4 years. Now I'm living in the United States. So I'm not sure says what that means, but maybe that makes sense. Parandusha said Manchetta. Okay, I can't even understand that, man. This is something else. I need English, please. Santiji Karoma says, what's up? What's up, guys? We got Travel Spanish with Claire says hello from Lima, Peru. Shout out to Lima, Peru. All right, cool. So we got V. Lee from Chicago. We got Lawrence Maurice, who's giving us a thumbs up. Woods Pizza Bagels says, nah, coming back is a blessing. Big 66 is just laughing. Who else do we got here? Who else do we got? Okay. Says is watching from the Bronx in New York, BX. Okay, cool. So again, today we're going to talk about the biggest mistakes I've made since moving back to the United States, what I regret now that I've been 7 months living back in the US after leaving West Africa. So for those of you who aren't as familiar, I lived in West Africa for almost 4 years. So I spent a little over 2 years living in Ghana. I'm of Sierra Leonean descent, represented every day. I was living in Ghana for a couple of years. And then I moved to Sierra Leone for a little over a year. And earlier this year, I moved back to the United States, back to Brooklyn, where it all began. So I'm back in the US full time, but I do go back to the continent of Africa every quarter. As of right now, I just left in October. I'll be back in December, and I'll be going back frequently. So there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things that I'm working on. And so we're going to talk about all that stuff for all of you guys who are joining, regardless of where you're watching from, right? If you're watching on Instagram, YouTube, wherever you're watching from, the goal of this particular stream is for you all to learn from the mistakes that some of us have made, and from what's working, you guys can then replicate it if you decide you want to visit, move, or invest in the continent of Africa. So Larry Hurley is saying, has there been a change to the Sierra Leone citizenship program? I have the required DNA test. As far as I understand, there hasn't been any changes as of yet, and that can change at any point in time. But they are supposed to be having a group coming in, if they haven't already come in November, who've come and gotten their citizenship. So you want to check out the live stream I did on that with Aisha Ladan, or you can go check out her channel. She could talk you through what that process looks like, or if you want to talk to me directly, happy to walk you through what options are available there. But yeah, as you guys know, Ghana gave some citizenship to a bunch of different people, very different from the Sierra Leonean process. Unfortunately, I didn't get my Ghanaian citizenship, but I do have dual citizenship with Sierra Leone in the United States. All right, cool. So there's a bunch of people joining from all over the place. So I just want to make sure I'm catching everybody. If you guys can hear me, give me a thumbs up. I see a bunch of thumbs ups. I see, yeah, I see what is it? Tuckwick, North Carolina, Ojack 52 from Texas. Who else do we got? Everybody's joining, but nobody's giving me a thumbs up, so telling me that you can hear me and where you're watching from. All right, but we got people from all over the world watching. So, you know, I want to make sure that I dive right into it, right? What are some of the things, the mistakes that I made? So, you know, many of you guys are new, right? I haven't been live on Instagram in months. So for all of you guys who are unaware, I used to go live every week with African Stream, and we would talk about all things African news related. And African Stream was kicked off of almost all the major platforms except for Patreon, Rumble, and X. And so, but at one point in time, they lost their ability to go live on Instagram. And that same week, I lost my ability to go live on Instagram. And so I feel like it was related. And as of last Monday, Instagram reinstated my ability to go live on Authentic African on YouTube. So this is a big moment. This is week 2 of being able to go back live on Instagram. Guys, it has been since March of this year that I could not go live on this platform. Somebody was trying to stop my flow. I'm gonna just leave it at that. But shout out to Dynamic Deborah from Denver, Colorado. You got Ian Laddie Plummer from Bronx, New York. Blanche Cameron from London. Deborah from Nova Scotia. Okay, so we got all of the world represented here. I haven't caught anybody from Australia as of yet. If you're watching from Australia, put it in the chat so I know you're watching from Australia. All right, cool. So if you see me looking over here, it's because I got the Instagram over here, YouTube over here. So sometimes I got to go back and forth to see who's saying what. Shout out to El Fiver River. Sorry, something from Los Angeles, California. Shout out to you. So Mrs. Sweetbutter is asking, do you have an email list we can join so we don't lose contact? It's a great question. It's a great question. I am restarting my email list in about a week or so. I had a substantial email list that I had before. I'm restarting it. All right. So let me get into today's content, right? So what do I regret? What do I regret? And what mistakes did I make? So first of all, let's give some of you guys a background for those of you who don't know me that well and, you know, who follow the platform but don't really know the person behind the platform. So as I mentioned, I'm a Sierra Leonean American, grew up in the United States, went to Sierra Leone for the first time as an adult in about 2010. Didn't go back again till 2017. And then I was going regularly every year, at least twice a year, until I moved in November of 2020. I went to Sierra Leone for 2 months and then officially moved to Ghana in January of 2021. I lived there until recently, where I recently moved back to the United States. Plenty of content on what that experience was like. You guys, if you guys are new to this platform, you would definitely want to check out the YouTube channel where I go through all of my life experiences. And even now I'm uploading videos that I didn't get a chance to upload before, like, you know, setting up, you know, phone services, setting up internet service, all the different things that might be helpful for you guys if you're ever planning to make that move. I know this year is a big year. It's an election year in the United States. There tends to be mass exodus of people going to the continent. And so this platform is meant to help you if you ever do that. All right, so yeah, so there's a lot of mistakes that I made leaving, and I left in a hurry. You know, when I left the continent, I had to make an emergency trip 4 weeks prior to move before leaving the continent. Had to make an emergency trip. I was here for about 2 weeks in the U.S. on a family matter. I went back to Sierra Leone, and I had 2 weeks to basically get my life together and move to the United States. So what are some of the things that mistakes that I made in that process? Number one, I didn't set up a number of different things that I should have set up upon leaving. For example, There are building permits with the building that I'm working in with. You know, I had paid for a building permit before did I pay for a building permit before I even moved to Africa? I paid for a building permit the first year I was on the continent of Africa. And I kind of forgot about it, but these conversations about building came back up, and my new contractor, the fourth contractor that I've had in this time frame, asked me where my building permit was, and I was like, oh, I don't have it. And he was like, yeah, you definitely need to have a building permit. Like, that's an imperative part of what you're doing. And so I reached back out to the guys who I paid $600 to get my building permit, and like in a couple of weeks, like a month ago, and they're finally going through the process of getting me my building permit. But that's definitely something I should have done before I left. And why I say that is because trying to do things like this remote is really, really challenging. You know, a lot of people don't have their data on all day long. Like living in the United States, we take it for granted that our phone is always on the internet. Whatever phone plan you have generally has enough data that you're just on data all the time. Unless you have like a Mint Mobile or a Simple Mobile or one of those like prepaid plans or lower cost plans, generally you have internet access, which can feel like almost unlimited access to the internet. That is not how it works in West Africa. Many people have to actually connect. They have to pay for data. They have to pay for data. And so many people don't pay for data. Or they don't stay on their data all day long. So what does that mean? For me in the United States, if I'm trying to communicate to them to communicate with them through WhatsApp, many times I'm not able to reach them. It's a lot easier to do a direct call when you're on the ground to be able to reach people locally. So, and also to be able to do a pop-up at an office to make sure something is being done that you've requested. Because I'm trying to chase after people via WhatsApp, people can decide to read. They can leave you on read, which happens all the time, or they can leave it unread and not even get to it for a day or two at a time. And so that's one of my biggest mistakes that I made, was not completing that process of ensuring that I had the proper building permits and all of that stuff done while I was there. What else I wish I would have done while I was in Ghana was setting up my mobile money account from the mobile app with the SIM card on my phone. Let me explain that to you. So when you leave a country for an extended period of time in West Africa in general, because the phone services are prepaid, if you don't pay every single month to add new minutes, eventually that phone number becomes dormant enough that they give that phone number to someone else. One of the tricks that you can do in order to keep your phone number afloat is just every once in a while add mobile money to the mobile money account associated with that phone number. What that generally means is downloading the mobile money account. So like, for example, or the mobile money app, sorry. So like I use the Orange app in Sierra Leone. And so that allows me to be able to log in to Orange daily. You see, I'm logged into Orange daily, and you can't really see the app, but that's the app. So I'm logged in there. And so I can send money to people locally this way. So like, you know, I had to get a bed frame made because my former bed frame got broken due to like mildew and all that kind of stuff. So I needed to have somebody redo a bed frame for me in my bedroom in Sierra Leone. So I've used the Orange Money app on this phone to send money to get that done. And so I should have done that. I should have also, the last time I was in Ghana, go get an updated debit card from my bank account and utilize that bank account. I just got a notification from UBA that my bank account was dormant for too long, and they decided to basically put a temporary hold on my UBA bank account that I have in Ghana, and it has money in that account. So I can't use the card to take money out. There's not a lot of money in it, but there's some money in there. And so now I have to, next time I go to Ghana, go back to the bank account and do that, or go back to the bank and do that. So, you know, all of that to say you want to tie up loose ends, right? If you're planning to go to the continent, you're going back and forth, you can tie up loose ends, and you can extend those ends, I guess, to keep the metaphor going, right? So you know, if you have the mobile money app or the mobile app for that particular telephone provider on your phone, you can continue to communicate with people that way, and you can continue to keep your phone available. WhatsApp, what happens a lot is you'll be able to continue to keep your WhatsApp until somebody who gets that phone number next decides they want to set up WhatsApp. Now you have an issue, right? And so you're going to have to change your WhatsApp number in order to keep those conversations going. And that's a process and an issue, and you got to have an available phone number to change it to. And so that's one of the other things that I found that's been really, really challenging for me is I have the phone number on WhatsApp for Ghana, but I don't have the ability to get text messages or send text messages to that number. And that I ran into that challenge with Google. Google was trying to confirm my identity for monetization on YouTube, and they weren't able to do it because, of course, I was no longer in country and I wasn't getting messages. So those are two of the mistakes. So again, making sure that it's all under the umbrella of tying up loose ends, but I definitely should have gotten my building permit, which now I'm getting remotely, which has been a challenge to say the least. And then dealing with this bank account closure or freezing of the bank account. That's not an ideal scenario to be in, right? When your bank account gets frozen, that's not in the place you want to be. So, you know, I just had to learn that lesson, and now I know better, and I'm sharing it with you guys so you guys don't make the same mistakes. I would also, so yeah, that's the biggest thing. Give yourself some runway before you are leaving any West African country. I left Ghana in a rush to go to Sierra Leone, and then I left Sierra Leone in a rush to come back to the United States. And those were two mistakes that I made because in doing so, I didn't tie up my loose ends. And when I was leaving Ghana, technically, if you're planning to leave for good, like if you've been living there and you're leaving for good and you had been paying into their Social Security, they actually can pay you out a check. You know how, like, as an older person in the United States, when you retire, you get a Social Security check every month. In Ghana, the way it works is if you're paying into their Social Security program, when you are leaving, if you've been living there and you've been paying into it, like through a job or whatever, which I had been doing, when you're leaving, they can actually cut you a check and pay you that money when you're exiting the country. And so that is something I'm going to need to do next time I go back. But I don't know. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But we'll see if I have time to do that. But I have a lot to try to do next time I go back. So those are two of the biggest mistakes that I made leaving the country. Mistakes that I made since coming. I will say that I didn't do a good enough job staying in communication with people on the ground who are responsible for different things that are happening. As much as I can, I try to. But again, it's difficult to do it over WhatsApp. And so the best thing that you can do is set up a system where you're constantly communicating. You have an open line of communication constantly. I'm hearing that there's no sound on Instagram. Is there no sound for you guys on Instagram? Let me know. A couple people had sent me a thumbs up that they could hear me on Instagram earlier. On IG, which IG? Was it Christabel? Was that Christabel saying there's no sound on IG? Is that, shout out to Christabel, by the way. Which IG? Jay Hitago or Authentic African? Because I'm live on both. Can you guys hear me? Okay, so Dancing with the River says I can hear you. Legendary 5.1 says can hear me. Okay, so those are all people from Authentic African's YouTube channel. Jay from Joe Hitago YouTube channel. Can you guys hear me? Troy, can you hear me? Shout out to Troy. Okay, Chrissy was joining from, okay. So it looks like those guys. All right, so I'll so the Joe Hitago one you said you couldn't hear me on, and it looks like a bunch of people cannot hear me on that. Sorry, guys. All right, so shout out to Kwame. Kwame says, "Hey Joe, hope you and everyone are well. I am as well as I can be for sure." Okay, so I think I had alluded to this before, and I can't really talk about it fully right now. But I will say there were some loose ends to tie up in terms of property that I didn't really handle, and so these are all things that I definitely recommend. If you guys are involved in if you guys have any land or anything like that, make sure when you're leaving the country, you tie up all proper loose ends. That'll be a conversation for a whole nother time. We will get into it for sure. I just can't do it right now. But yeah, there's a lot to discuss in regards to land ownership and just making sure that you tie everything up. Mrs. Sweet Butter said you could hear me. Shout out to that name, Mrs. Sweet Butter. Verified on IG. So yeah, those are a couple of the mistakes that I made. I also made other mistakes. You know, like I said, I made mistakes not having a regular check-in with folks on the ground. So I have different people operating in different ways all around Sierra Leone and one or two people in Ghana. And, you know, from the contractor to a caretaker to a person who's running errands for me in an outer province. And what I found to be difficult is when you need something done quickly, if you're not in constant communication with people, you know, out of sight, out of mind is the kind of thing that happens, right? If you need something done ASAP, it's going to be very difficult to get it done if you're not constantly communicating with folks. So the best thing that you can do is choose a day out of the week. For me, that day is Sunday now. And on Sundays, I make it a point to make sure I communicate with all folks on the ground. I get up early, 5 a.m. or so, 6 a.m., 6 a.m., sometimes 7. And I make those calls, start making those calls to people on the ground to ensure that I have a constant communication with those folks and they can continuously do the things that I need to have done on the ground. Also, another mistake that I made, a huge mistake that I made that I had to learn later, is insisting on getting receipts for everything you are paying for. This is an obvious one that I've already known, something that I started to get relaxed on once I came back because I was so focused on so many other things. What I found is that the best incentive is to require the next payment, the receipt is due for any other future payments. So for example, I have a caretaker who, and I made this mistake on the last thing I sent money on, but who I send money to do certain things. And they had asked for money for food and stuff like that, but they hadn't given me a receipt that they owed me for about 3 weeks on something that I paid for. Paid a significant amount, like $90 for. I mean, it's not, you know, tons and tons of money, but it's a back water bill, which I didn't know I had. It's a water bill that was like $90. And if you see the amount of water pumps for like literally 20 minutes, and it's like a trickle of water, and they're charging me $90 for, I think it was like a couple of months, however many months. So I paid that, but I was like, I need to have a receipt. I can't send more money without having the receipt for that. So I was, you know, I got the receipt finally. But I realized that if I'm not paying close attention to these things, you know, and the further you are away, the longer you are off the continent, the more you kind of let these things slide and these things slip, and you don't want that to happen. So you got to make sure that as much as possible you are ensuring that these guys are in constant communication and that you get receipts for everything you're getting done on the continent. So those are a couple of the mistakes that I made. A couple of mistakes that I made here in while I was in Sierra Leone is, you know, if you are a person who's taking public transportation, so like, and you have a little bit of a walk to where you're going, one of the things that I'd recommend you do, one is have a pair of sneakers or shoes that you're okay getting really, really dirty, really dusty and really dirty. That was a mistake that I made. It was a huge mistake that I made because I ruined the bottoms of a bunch of different shoes. Let me show you guys something. So these are already getting they're I'm already doing workouts in these shoes, but this is a brand new bottoms that I had to put on these shoes. Brand new bottoms that I had to put on these shoes because while I was in Sierra Leone, I completely damaged those shoes. And it was because even though, look, you're going to a client meeting, you want to be dressed in your best, or you're going to pitch, which was me. I was going to pitch. And when I would go, I would wear those shoes, and they got ruined. I mean, the boots that I showed you had a hole in them. Like I was this close to, like, if I stepped on a rock, it's over, losing toes. So, it's definitely something that I would definitely take into consideration if I was you. So like if you have a little bit of a walk to get to wherever you're going, the dust and the dirt and the dryness can really mess with like shoes that have leather or faux leather. The materials that are on dress shoes can really, really get ruined. And I learned that lesson the hard way. Also, my living room door has a little bit of a draft issue. It's not fully secured where a draft can't come in and out. I had my shoes lined up right next to the outside door. So the dust and the air and stuff was coming in and also drying out those shoes. And man, if you could see how my shoes looked, I mean, the guy who I took them to here to fix them up, he was like, man, what have you been doing? Like, he was like, you playing basketball in these shoes? I'm like, no, I mean, these are my dress shoes. I was wearing them. I was wearing them while I was there. So that was another lesson that I learned. And I think it's just really important one. I know it seems kind of random and out of left field, but trust me, if you're living on the continent for some time and you are going to be, walking to get to public transportation, just make sure that and even if it's like, you're not walking that far, it's a block or whatever, you're just enough of a walk that you have to walk through dust up and dirt. And you need to be constantly cleaning your shoes. That was the other thing. When I was in Ghana, I had someone constantly cleaning my shoes. My housekeeper was. When I got to Sierra Leone, I didn't have that. So those are some of the major mistakes that I made along the way. And, if you guys just make some of these adjustments to yourself, I think you'll be in much better shape than I was in. All right, cool. Any questions? You guys have any questions for me? Any thoughts? Let me see if there are any questions from anybody in the audience on Instagram. I see a bunch of different people joining from all over the place. And again, so if you guys are just joining, what we're talking about today is some of the biggest mistakes that I've made 7 months living in Africa, either before I left or since I've been here. Like I said, the longer I've been here, the biggest mistake I made was not like having an open line of constant communication with people on the ground. That was probably the biggest mistake that I made. Trust me on this. You want to do that. You definitely want to do that. Out of sight, out of mind. Or pick another one. Cats away, mice will play, all that stuff. All of it applies. All of it applies. So if you're not taking care of business, somebody's taking care of it for you, and it's not with your best interest at heart. All right, cool. So doesn't seem like people have a lot of questions today. I know that today's live stream, the topic came up about 20 minutes before I went live. I was supposed to go live with a guest today, but they weren't able to make it today. So we're going to go live with them next week. And so I'm looking forward to having that discussion. So there's been a bit of news in Africa too. I don't know if you guys have seen that the new president of Senegal said that they're going to continue to build on their relationship with France, but asking for no military troops from France in the country of Senegal, which is a big shift from Senegal's previous stance. And it seems like in some ways aligning with the Sahel states and what they've been doing. And so I'm following that closely, and I wish I was going live every week with African Stream so we could talk about these topics. But there's some updates we can have. World politics. I guess you're just going to talk. So world politics or Politica, was there something you wanted to say? Did you have a question or a comment? How did it change your life? How did what change my life? Politica. World Politica says, where do you live now? I live in New York City now. I didn't see your messages. So World Politica, I live in New York City now. You're saying, how did it change my life? How did what change my life? How did moving to the continent of Africa change my life? Is that the question? All right. So I'm going to presume that was the question. So my life changed for the better moving to the continent of Africa. Number one, there's no way to describe what it's like to see yourself represented in all areas of news, entertainment, politics, career, every single area of life that you see someone who looks like you represented. So people who are doing well, who look like you everywhere. And you are the majority, not the minority. It's very hard to describe what that feels like without actually living through that experience. So that's number one. Number two is that I was never more proud of the continent in which I come from without living there. You know, I think you can be proud to be Sierra Leone, you can proud to be Ghanaian or, you know, Nigerian or whatever, but until you live on the continent, it's harder to have that same sense of pride unless you're there and you're in it every single day. And it taught me how to diversify my interests. You know, living on the continent, I now have land, significant amount of land, not that significant, but acres of land, which I did not have before ever moving, never considered, never would have considered had I not moved. And I'm looking to acquire more. So I think those are some of the biggest changes, life changes that I saw after moving. So Mrs. Sweetbutter says, what's the young lady's name who's in Burkina Faso who used to go live with you frequently from African Stream? Her name is Enem Richardson. And the Instagram page, if you want to find out more from her, the Instagram page that she has is called Burkina Books, like Burkina Faso, Burkina Books. And that is the page that focuses on the Thomas Sankara Center. And so that is her like her online persona, is she only focuses on the Thomas Sankara Center. And so if you want to support what she's doing and check her out, go to Burkina Books on Instagram. And African Stream is still on X, formerly known as Twitter. They're on Rumble too, if you're on there, and they're on Patreon. So if you want to check them out, you can. And that reminds me, I need to follow up with some folks over there. So there may be some updates coming soon on that. Just reminded me. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Where would you say is the safest place to live in Africa right now? That's a good question. So let me first say there are 10 companies, 10 countries, 10 or more than 10. There's at least 10 countries ahead of the United States on the Global Peace Index. 10 countries in Africa ahead of the United States on the Global Peace Index. Sierra Leone just passed Ghana. I think it's top 3. Ghana still top 5. But I will say this, most countries in Africa are safe to live in. There are a few that have issues with, political violence and things like that. But genuinely or generally, most countries are safe. Safest is depending on what makes the most sense for you as an individual. But there are a lot of people moving to Ghana. As you can see, 254 people got, was it 254? I think it's 254 people got citizenship in the last 2 weeks in Ghana. So many people are making the move there. Many people are making the move to Kenya. So if you guys know, if you guys go back and look at the content I did with, or the live stream I did with Kia Wakesho Simmons, and she talked about the relocation, helping people relocate to Kenya. She's planning to move to Kenya, and she's helping other people do that as well. And so that's Traverse Culture. So you can just check out my channel, look up that live stream, and find Kia Simmons, KEA SIMMONS. So check her out, check the live stream out that I did with her, and she could tell you all about that. All right. So I hope that that answers your question. Pretty much all safe, but in terms of the countries that I would recommend, in terms of like where most people recommend it to me, in terms of places I haven't been or places that I have been, people always recommend to me Lagos, Nigeria, or Abuja, Nigeria, Abidjan, but I think that's only if you speak French, really. Which is Abidjan is the Ivory Coast. Then you have Accra, Ghana. You have Freetown, Sierra Leone, for those Sierra Leoneans, Freetown. I would also say Nairobi, Kenya is a place that people talk about a lot, and people talk about Cape Town and Johannesburg in South Africa. All right, so Christabel says, so Joe, do you miss Sierra Leone, and when are you planning to head back there? I do miss Sierra Leone, absolutely. I miss Sierra Leone a ton, and I plan to head back very soon. I'll tell you privately exactly when I'm going. I don't really let people know publicly, but I'll be there soon. I'll be there soon. But yeah, I do miss it. I miss it a lot. I miss people, and I miss the lifestyle I had there, for sure. For sure. Big Will says, I'm headed back to Sierra Leone soon. Is there anything I should be aware of? I mean, there's a lot. That's a lot. Just go back to my video and watch 10 things I wish I knew before going to Sierra Leone. Watch that video. That'll tell you everything you need to be aware of. There's a lot there, but bring mosquito repellent. Make sure you have cash, like hundreds, so that you can change that money over, because the ATM fees are kind of crazy. So you want to have cash. Make sure you have mosquito repellent. Be careful who you give tips to. Everybody wants to get a tip. Everything's a tipping service. So like if you're pulling a car out of a parking spot, somebody's gonna stand back there and be like, you know, come on. And then of course, if they're standing out there to help you back out of your spot, you better get them some cash. So so yeah, I think, you know, those are all things that I would say you should probably take into consideration for sure. So Big Will says, I'm actually interested in doing a mineral tour because I'm interested in mining. Do you have advice on how I should proceed? Big Will, let me tell you something about the mineral and the mining sector in Sierra Leone. Unless you have a relationship with someone on the ground, it may be very difficult to do. It's like a mafia. These folks do not take well to outsiders in their industry because it's already difficult enough as it is. So it's not like a really easy entrance into the space unless you have relationships or you have a ton of cash. So I would say the best way to proceed with that is, you know, if you want someone to kind of help you navigate it somewhat, it's the top of the Freetown. It's a Freetown City Council. At the top of Freetown City Council, there's a company there run by a gentleman whose father has a mining gold mine. A diamond exchange, and he'd be the person to talk to. You know what? Shoot me a DM or send me an email. What I haven't done is put my email. Shoot me a DM or send me an email to my email here that is shown Authentic African Life, and I'll tell you the name of the person you're gonna want to talk to. It's escaping me right now, but he might be the person you want to speak to about you know, the mining sector. He might have some advice to give you and what to point you in what direction to go to. Excuse me. Big Will says, do you know any international companies in Sierra Leone that are looking to hire Americans for remote work? Okay, you mean like if you're in America, companies in Sierra Leone looking to hire Americans? Not a ton. I haven't heard a bunch. I mean, I know Easy Solar has a few roles that are remote, from what I understand. But I haven't heard much. Or if you're also speaking about being an American and moving to Sierra Leone, it's going to be very difficult to work remotely for other companies based elsewhere, unless it's in the same time zone in the UK. And even still, you'll run into challenges, as I did while living on the continent. So Vio says, I am an East African who has never been to Africa. Which country do you recommend for building a business as a foreigner? I don't recommend any one specific country because everybody's different. You're going to have to go to the continent, travel to a couple of different places, and see what environment makes the most sense for you. And then once you like that place that you go to, go often, many times before you ever start the idea of building a business. What I have found in general is people start businesses. You build a business in search for a problem. You need to build a solution. You need to be in search for a solution to a problem that's already out there. So a lot of people are like, I got an idea. I'm going to do this business, and I'm just going to do this business in that country. And you have to understand that market. You have to understand their needs, and you have to understand how to do business in that country before you just start the idea of doing a business. And every country is different, right? So it's very difficult to say which country you should go to and start a business, because not every country responds the same way to different business offerings, and pricing can be different. Your experience and your knowledge is going to be different depending on where you are. So all of those things have to be taken into consideration. What I will say is you have to be very price conscious depending on who you're trying to target, especially if you're targeting locals with your business. Then you're going to need to be able to know that you're going to have to operate at a loss for some time, or very, very, very slim margins, until you build up a consumer base of people who have, cash that they can spend. So I hope that helps to answer your question. I know it's not a very specific answer to your question, but that is a very broad topic, because we're talking about 54 countries. Each country has many markets within the countries. So yeah. So Big Will saying, what's your email address again? It's actually scrolling across the bottom here, AuthenticAfricanLife@gmail.com. That's my email. So you'll see it here scrolling across the bottom where it says, if you want to support via Zelle, that's the email. Afro Carib says, are you planning to invest in a ready-to-go property or an off-plan unit in Accra, Ghana? It seems that the real estate market is very hot at the moment and can only be increasing leaps and bounds. Great question. I am planning to buy land and build. I have a contractor already, and he has also built a house for my friends in Ghana. So I would likely work with him, have him go back, work with some of the local staff that he had worked with, and see if we can build in Ghana. But yeah, I think I would likely have a local person build for me, as opposed to buying ready-made. Ready-made is also more expensive up front in a lot of ways. Not always, but in a lot of cases. A lot of places they'll say, you need to do, this is like $50,000 and you can do this in 4 small installments. Well, $50,000 in 4 installments is not small for most people, right? So, in some cases, if you buy the land and you build on your own, you can take however long you want to take to build it. Even if it's going to cost $75,000, you could spend that time over the next 10, 15 years, however long it takes you to build it. And you can build it at your own speed based on your own budget. But as long as you own the land, that's the most important thing. So, I'll likely do that. If I have a large windfall with any of the investments that I have, I may just buy ready-made so that I can Airbnb it while I'm not there and move in when necessary, like a friend of mine did. So we'll see what that looks like. But yeah, I am actively looking at investments ASAP. Some more in Sierra Leone, but just for kind of long-term thinking. But in Ghana, I'm definitely thinking I'm going to make a purchase before the end of the year 2025. Lots of good questions. Any more questions? Okay, so Vio was saying, agreed, safety was your main concern. Okay, well, you should be fine in any of the countries that I mentioned. I will say that South Africa does have, in certain areas, firearm issues. I'm trying to figure out how to describe that without YouTube striking me or whatever. Firearm issues. So you just have to keep that in mind, because that is a country that does allow it, and people do have it. Just look up Oscar Pretoria, the former Olympic athlete. Okay. Any of the questions, comments, thoughts? We got somebody in here from Italy. Shout out to All right, cool. Well, look, guys, we're about 45 minutes in. I don't know if you guys have any more questions, but if you do, please ask away. It's been good. We guess that you guys have had some good questions. Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty much going to end today's live stream unless there are any questions that come in. Every time I do that, within like a minute of me saying that, as soon as I press end stream, I get a bunch of questions. So I do want to give people an opportunity, especially because I just saw a bunch of people just jump on the YouTube live. If you have any questions for me about the mistakes I made, leaving the continent of Africa, why I left, what I regret about it, any of that kind of stuff, let me know. If you have any questions specifically about moving to the continent, you know, obviously some questions are a little bit easier answered specific to Ghana or Sierra Leone, because that's where I lived, but happy to answer any questions that anybody might have along the way. All right. I think that's going to do it for today. It looks like nobody could hear me on my personal Instagram, Joe Hatagwa. So I don't know what happened. Okay, here we go. Mrs. Sweetbutter says, do you have any info on the president of Burkina Faso offering citizenship to the diaspora? Nothing yet on that note. It seems as though he's definitely open to making it visa free to go to Burkina Faso. Offering citizenship has not been something that I have heard him speak about as yet. And that's Ibrahim Traore, by the way. I haven't heard much about that. But that's something that I think INEM would definitely be able to help. Okay, so Black, Brown, Brown, and Bright says, what's your top 5 countries and why? I think I named them. Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, and Sierra Leone. In no particular order, but those are my top 5 in Africa for me. So why? South Africa has a blossoming tech ecosystem and growing. And I have a peer mentor that lives there and has quite a substantial business there. Kenya, because it is a very developed or developing nation, and has a lot of international business going on, a lot of people coming in and out of there. Great for networking. Nairobi is huge for that. So that's why South Africa and Kenya, even though those are 2 countries that I have not personally been to, because I have people who live there and who are always talking to me about these things, I have those 2 on my list. And those are also places that I've already even considered buying land in, even though I haven't even touched the ground there, because of what I know and the information they've been able to give to me. These are very well-informed people. Like the person in South Africa has raised $40-something million for their startup in South Africa. So they have figured out some things in South Africa. And the person in Kenya, and the people in Kenya, I have family members who grew up and lived in Kenya their entire lives. And I know other people who are moving there and who have businesses there. So Kenya and South Africa are 2 countries on the list. Nigeria is on the list because by GDP, it is always top 1 or 2 in the last 15 years on the continent of Africa. It's a huge population, very smart people, difficult to make things happen. But if you can, you have large enough audience of folks and enough people with money who can, who actually can, who can be consumers of your product and your business. So Nigeria is on the list. Ghana is also on the list because smooth transition. Many people from the Americas and the diaspora have moved and are moving to Ghana. So there's a whole plethora of potential customers for a particular business for you and those folks, because you guys all have a similar understanding. You can potentially pitch products and offerings to those folks. And then Sierra Leone, of course, is on the list because that is my country and I spend time in Sierra Leone often. So that's why it's a top 5 country for me. The Sahel region is one that is another one that you know, as long as they can figure out more trade things with other countries. But, you know, I've heard so many good things from Enam Richardson, who's living there, who, you know, as we mentioned, is someone who works for African Stream and who I'd been going live with. So she always had good things to say. She's also been to Mali, and she's also been to Niger, and she said they were all incredible places. So, you know, honorable mention to the Sahel region. Okay. Jordan Cook says, what made you leave the continent? A couple things made me leave the continent. Number one, as I was building my business, it's slowly growing, and it wasn't at a place that it could allow me to make the investments I want to make in the time frame that I need to make them. You know, right now is the best time to be investing in land and other things on the continent of Africa, as people are starting to get in. It's already at a place where people talk about going to Ghana now in December or other times throughout the year. Once it already starts to hit mass market like that, you're already too late to the game. Things are already too expensive. You're already behind other people who've already had a head start, right? So ideally you get in sooner than those folks, so that you're in a place where you can kind of benefit from other people who are coming. So I needed to come to the United States to raise more funds through my full-time job that I have that will allow me to be able to invest more on the continent, build a house faster, buy more land, and pour money into my on-the-ground business there and accelerate what I'm doing. So that was some of the main reasons why I moved back to the United States. Let's see, any other questions before we call it? How expensive is it to own land in South Africa? That's a great question. I don't have all the details on that versus the different countries. I would say that it seems to be more inexpensive in South Africa than many other places, for sure. Pro Women has an interesting question. Just came in. Who'd you vote for? So I haven't told anyone who I voted for in this group. If you know me personally, you know who I voted for. And if you listen to my rhetoric, you probably have an idea. But I try to keep away from that, because here's what I do understand. I have found that there are people across the political spectrum that want to see Africa move to its rightful place on the world stage. And there are different ways they see the United States involved in that process. And so I don't want to start to talk about politics in the US and have a division between folks who are all here to try to see Africa progress and proceed. You know, so I really don't talk about that on the live streams. But yeah, I mean, I've mentioned a few times, I think, where I land on the political spectrum. Don't do it much now, but if you've been listening long enough, you know where I land on the political spectrum. And if you know where I land on the political spectrum, then you probably know who I voted for. But I won't say here. So context clues, go back and watch some live streams. You'll see. No, Pro Women, I didn't say who I was. I didn't say I was gonna disclose who I voted for. I said I was gonna disclose who I thought was going to win. And to be honest, who I thought was gonna win won, actually. So I meant to do it on that live stream. I meant to put it in the comments. Did I ever put it in the comments on that live stream afterwards? You have to check and let me know, Pro Women, if I did. But my assumptions were true based on, you know, what I had been reading, seeing, hearing. Yeah. But no, not saying who I voted for at all. Let's see. What else do we have? Sheik, I'll just leave it at that for now, says, that's the way to go. Go and develop your country. Others will follow. It's time. With God's blessing, everyone will succeed. Okay. Yalban says, could you read Instagram comments? I am, as much as I can. They're coming in like crazy. Which ones did I miss? I thought I've been reading Instagram comments. I said, how expensive is it to own land in South Africa from Black Brown Bright? That's an Instagram comment. I just read your comment from Instagram. I just read another one. Are there any comments that I'm missing? Rewrite it if on Instagram if you feel like I missed your content. Let's see. Jordan Cook says, I see. Good to have you back in BK. Good to be back in BK. So Sankofa says, I voted for Trump. Khalid Townseal says, so you voted for Trump. I never said who I voted for. And again, I won't say who I voted for. So please guess, though. That's cool. It's always interesting to see who people think I voted for. But I'm not going to say who I voted for. Not on this platform, maybe somewhere else. But when we're talking about the advancement of Africa, I'm going to keep it from speaking about American politics. I'll speak about African politics all day long. Who's in office, who the opposition party is, what the election process looks like in that country, what's their platforms, those kinds of things. But as an American, it's too divisive and it's not useful for the advancement of Africa when we argue about American politics as it pertains to Africa. So yeah. So Jordan Cook says, do you have a favorite African leader? I know Ibrahim Traore is the most popular currently. Yeah, that's a great question. Really good question. You know what? Until this year and until African Stream opened my eyes, do you know my favorite African president was going to be the Rwandan president, and I don't know why his name is escaping me right now. Paul Kagame. I don't know how, like, it just popped back into my head. But until this year, he was my favorite African president. Unfortunately, I would say with what's going on in the DRC and his support of the M23 rebels, is it M23? It's been so long since I've been going live with African Stream. Some of the stuff is not even registering. I'm not too sure I feel that way. I think Ibrahim Traore, as of right now, seems to be the person that has been following through on the rhetoric that he said while he was campaigning or while he took over. And since he's been in power, he seems to be following through with what he said. So I don't know, I don't want to say favorite president, but I would say he seems to be the one that I've been following and seeing that he seems to be following through with what he's saying. There are other presidents around the continent that are doing things as much as they can, little by little, which I like. The other presidents of the Sahel regions, like their own specific regions, seem to be working on some things in Niger and Mali. We'll see what's happening in Senegal. There's a lot of dispute whether or not he's betrayed the Sahel region or not. We'll see how that goes. The new president in Senegal. So yeah, I mean, it seems like Ibrahim Traore right now is the person who most closely resembles the ideas and the ideals of Kwame Nkrumah, of Thomas Sankara, of Winnie Mandela, and some other folks. I know Gaddafi's a polarizing figure, but just in terms of some of the things Gaddafi had been talking about, in terms of nationalizing certain things to ensure that his people all can rise through the ranks together. So yeah, I mean, I think yeah, Ibrahim Traore seems to be up there, and yeah, and Goita of Mali is also someone who, as you said, has been an inspiration to Traore, and also is the head of the federation of the three countries. If they're talking about coming together and making one country and calling themselves individual states as part of a federation. And if that actually ends up going through, then Goita seems to be the leader, right? Currently. So yeah, that's what I would say. Jordan Cook says Paul Kagame was my favorite too until I heard about what goes on in the Congo, and he is allegedly behind it. Exactly. So Jordan, you and I, that was what happened for me. Goita, they said, did pay off Mali debt. Now, I did post about this. I'm not 100% sure that that was factually true. I know that and it's tough, right? Because it's like you don't want to say mainstream media has to report on something for people to know it to be true, but it is hard to corroborate that specific story. He paid off some significant amount of debt somewhere, but they said that he paid off all debt, which I'm not too sure is the case. Pro Woman says, I didn't. Okay. I didn't say who, I didn't say who I thought was going to win. Okay. So who I thought was going to win won. That was what happened. So I guess I said it now. So it's okay to discuss the pros and cons of U.S. policy and politics, especially towards Africa. Discussion can mitigate division. Yeah, maybe. I think what we'll have to see is if there's a policy that both administrations had applied, or if there were two different policies that we could compare back to back. But the biggest challenge when it comes to politics is that it just devolves into just the worst parts of who we are, and in the comment section and with each other. And although it'd be great for going viral, it means nothing in terms of the value that I can offer to people. So I have to be very careful how I talk about American politics, even as it pertains to the rhetoric of the politicians towards the continent of Africa. So I have done 3 live streams about who is better for Africa, but I've always left it up to you guys to decide who you think is better based on the different programs that they had all talked about. So you guys can go back and watch those live streams that I've done where I spoke about that, because you might get an idea for yourselves as who you think was better, and what programs you think are going to be best for the continent of Africa. All right, guys, we are an hour and 2 minutes in. This has been a great discussion so far. I like that you guys had a lot of questions. Okay, here's some stuff. Here we go. IS Production says, what do you think about Chad and Senegal telling France to get its troops to get out of their countries? I think it is probably a step in the right direction for them to become more independent. And if we're all looking for a more independent Africa, then that probably was the right move for them. Because it does seem that the French troops were not really helping to stave off these militant groups that are in these outer regions of each of these countries, right? These countries, Italy, France, America, all, have had troops in these countries, and they haven't seemed to have had any real success taking any land back and staving off these militant groups. But it seems as though Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, as they've worked together with their own militaries working together, they've seemed to be able to go through and stave off some of these groups, take back pieces of land, especially Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traore mentioned that a few months ago. He went to a place that had gotten taken back from the rebels, or I don't know, you want to call them rebels, militant groups, whatever. And so, I think it makes sense. Look, when these countries have their troops in Africa, what they generally do is they operate with impunity. They can do whatever they want, don't have to tell the country that they're in what they're doing. And I just think there's no real trade-off. If they're not being able to keep all of the bad actors, and they're also getting to do whatever they want for whatever missions they want to do, I don't think it makes sense for them to be there. So, I don't want to say any disparaging remarks about the U.S. military or anything like that. Don't kick me off of YouTube and Instagram. I'm just saying, if that's their end goal, it seems to be the best decision that they could have made for themselves. Yeah, I mean, I know IS Productions. I know that that's something that has been speculated and has been accused that the West are the ones training those militia groups, and at the very least, Ukrainian soldiers did give information to a militant group in Mali for them to execute some Mali soldiers. And, you know, obviously the United States is backing the Ukraine. So, you know, you guys take from that what you will. But yeah, I think that was obviously a problem, right? Right. You know, so yeah, I mean, you guys, like I said, you guys take from that at what you will. I'll report on the details. You guys walk away with it how you want. Jordan Cook is talking about Matt Gaetz, talking about invading Niger, calling them third world thugs. We did report on that when I was going live with African Stream when he was on the House floor. I think was this on the House floor or no? There was. I think this was while it was either on the House floor or it was while questioning a senior level of the military. There were some choice words being made. Yeah, he did not like the idea that Niger was asking the American troops to leave. So yeah, I mean, look, you know, every country would like to have military outposts everywhere else, right? It keeps them able to maneuver a little bit better around the world. That's an ideal scenario for any one individual country. So of course, the United States is no exception to that, right? Of course, they would like to. But I think you as a country have to determine what the trade-off is. And if you're benefiting from it, then okay. If you're not, then it seems as though they're making the decision to opt out of that. And that's what Senegal recently announced in this last week, that they're willing to partner with France, but not with their troops in Senegal. Any other questions? Any questions, comments, thoughts? No, I can't seem to find the tab. Okay, here we go. Okay. So guys, I think we are gonna end there. It's been a little over an hour and 7 minutes. I want to thank you guys all for joining. Enlightening discussion. I know it was kind of a last minute. I just threw this out there to go live. So I'm glad you guys have been able to join and have a fruitful conversation. You might have noticed that any comments about American politics specific to specific people and candidates, I did not post on screen because, again, we won't be having those discussions here. Maybe on my personal YouTube channel and maybe my personal Instagram page at some point in time, outside of Authentic African. You know, if I want to speak more about my life as an American and what's going on in the U.S., which is something that I've contemplated, I may make it a point to talk about things that are pertaining to U.S. politics. But until then, we will only talk about policies that are either being enacted or being proposed as it pertains to Africa, and we will follow along and see if they have a benefit to the continent. So with that, guys, I want to say thanks again for watching. I will see you all on the next live stream.